This screencast is about the difference between language and dialect. The fact that language and dialect are still seen as separate concepts implies that linguists can make a distinction for speech varieties worldwide. But in fact, there is no objective difference between the two, and yet we will try based on comprehensibility, nationality, writing, history, and sophistication. A clear dialect-language distinction could be based upon comprehensibility, meaning that if you can understand it without training, it's a dialect of your own language. If you can't, it's a different language. For example, Cockney or Yorkshire, South African, American, and Australian, all of these are mutually understandable variations of a language. An English speaker might be tempted to think that a language is a collection of dialects, where speakers of different dialects within the same language can all understand each other. English happens not to have very close relatives, and the comprehensibility stamp doesn't apply consistently beyond it, meaning that worldwide some mutually understandable ways of speaking, which one might think of as dialects of one language, are actually treated as separate languages. At the same time, some mutually incomprehensible tongues an outsider might view as separate languages are locally thought of as dialects. For example, Scandinavian languages consider themselves as distinct languages because they are spoken in different countries. However, there is nothing about Swedish, Danish, or Norwegian that classifies themselves as languages. Especially written-wise, they resemble each other closely enough to look more like dialects of one language. They can communicate with each other in their native tongues and still be able to understand each other. It turns out that it is impossible to determine precisely where one language stops and another begins. Chinese is a language that exists on paper. All of its varieties, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Taiwanese, are regarded as dialects. They have the same writing system, where each word has its own symbol. The cultural unity of Arab nations makes the Moroccan and the Jordanian consider themselves to be speaking different types of Arabic. However, in order to understand each other, they have to communicate in modern Standard Arabic. Speakers of Polish and Czech, on the other hand, can understand each other, but think of themselves as speaking different languages because of historical and cultural factors. According to data from Sharon Rose of the University of California, who studied the tongues spoken in Ethiopia, speakers of Sodo say, for he thatched a roof, kudunum. Not far away, people speaking Muhr say it's starting with a KH instead of a K, kudunum. Even further away, people who speak what they call Esha say with an R in place of the N, kudurum. In Gyeto, the same word is kuturu. And in Endigan, they start with an H instead of a KH, huturu. Now, where we started and where we finished look like different languages, but in between Sodo and Endigan are several other stages where differences are small. If those stages are dialects, what are they dialects of? History chooses one dialect as a standard, but all of them can be considered to be dialects, even though the ones on the end do not feel like the same language to their speakers. There are similar hints of this history today in Western Europe. In Catalan in Spain, qui is clo. To the north, in Occitan, it's clo as well, but then a little further north, in obscure rural varieties called Franco-Provençal, it's cla. In the Romanche of the Swiss mountains, it's clav, and in the northern Italian variety, Piedmontese, it's cav. And then, in what's known as Standard Italian, it's chiave. The idea of distinguishing languages from dialects is of no logical use here. The only thing that can attempt to impose a formal definition on terms, language, and dialect is perhaps to be found in popular usage, which suggests that languages are written and standardized and have a literature, while dialects are oral without codified rules and have no literature. Now, a typical objection to using literature as a dividing line is that there is oral literature. The Iliad and Odyssey likely originated as memorized poems. Is a dialect on some level unsophisticated? and a language more sophisticated. As often as not, obscure, unwritten dialects are much more grammatically complicated than familiar languages. The world is buzzing with qualitatively equal dialects, often shading into one another like colors, and mixing too, all demonstrating how magnificently complicated human speech can be. If either the terms language or dialect have any objective use, the best anyone can do is to say that there is no such thing as a language. Dialects are all there is.